Hello everyone, my name is Wayne.
And I'm Rebecca.
And we are your Bourbon Journey. We have turned the bar to, for myself, the area that I love the most. I've always enjoyed history and I've always enjoyed collecting things. When we started on the bourbon trail and looking back at bourbon and the history, my wife, she ended up, because of her parents, ended up getting a very substantial collection of older Jim Beam bottles. Back in June or July of last year, we took a trip to Louisville and we had the opportunity to do a tasting on Michael Veitch's porch. And he gave us the honor of cracking an Old Crow 100 proof bottle and bond bourbon that we tried on his porch. When I got it, and we tried it, I looked at the bottle and I was thinking, gosh, it's a really cool way to get vintage bottles at a little bit less of a price. Plus, the cap tends to preserve a lot of the bourbon and causes it, in our opinion, not to spoil. So Brad Bond at Revival Vintage Spirits, I went on to his webpage and found this bottle as well as another one that we'll review in the future. Hill and Hill was one that really appealed to me. I love the look of the bottle. We got the little gimmick here. This is a little pour that will go in a lot of the bottles. And Rebecca is going to read a little bit of the history of this bottle from 1974.
So Hill and Hill is a brand that was owned by National Distillers. As many of you probably know, in 1987, Jim Beam purchased National Distillers and acquired the brands that include Old Crow, Bourbon Deluxe, Old Taylor, Old Grandad, Hill and Hill, and Sunnybrook. Old Taylor, as again I'm sure you're aware, was subsequently sold to Sazerac Company, which is why it's at Buffalo Trace now. At this time, we were trying to figure out where the Hill and Hill Distillery was. It says it was produced in Louisville, Kentucky. And according to some history documents that we found, it is in Shively off Bernheim Lane, right behind the old Singram's Distillery and just south of the original Bernheim Distillery, which burned down at one point. The distillery is now being used to make industrial alcohol by redistilling alcohol from other distillers. So this is estimated grain used was typically corn, rye, and malted barley. I do not have an indication of what the actual mash bill was, but this particular bottle is from 1974. The proof is 80 and it's 4 years old. And I love their slogan on the back of the bottle. It says, "The bourbon with the flavor of America."
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick it up and kind of look at it. It is definitely lighter. And one thing we noticed since we originally poured is it's clouded up a little bit.
And that's not unusual. Sometimes these vintage spirits that have not seen air, oxygen in how many years since 1974?
We're talking 50 years.
So it sometimes it kind of retracts almost. It's like, what's going on? But the smell is still good.
Well, I look at it this way. I'm 58 years old, and trust me, I'm a little bit cloudy right now myself. And, this is a 50-year-old bourbon, and it's been sitting there. And it was cracked about 45 minutes to an hour ago. Mm-hmm. And
it's been sitting open.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And to kind of give you an idea, I'll point right here. This was almost to the very top. So this screw top, which I really wish more places would bring back and do, really preserve this over time.
We had to break the seal on the tack seal, which was actually a tack seal still back then.
Yep.
Not just for decoration, and crack that bottle open. And so it had a good pop. Mm-hmm. So we know it had been sealed pretty well, but now it is getting some oxygen to it. So let's check out the nose and see how it smells. Oh, yours has really good legs.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes with our lighting, I can see his glass better than I can see my glass as far as legs go. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, let's take a smell.
Oh yeah. There's a little bit of caramel.
It has a traditional bourbon smell. Mm-hmm. Sweetness. Get a little bit of the grain.
Maybe
not a lot of spice.
Maybe a little citrus.
Yeah, I can see the little bit of citrus on that.
I really like the smell. And this is 80 proof, correct?
This is 80 proof, so it's one of the lower ones on proof. Mm-hmm. And it is a 4-year-old though, so it should have some barrel to it. Shall we go ahead and taste it?
Yep.
To history.
To history. 50 years you've been waiting. Young lady, it is time for you to open up. Cheers.
Wow, that is sweeter on the palate than it was on the nose.
Oh, yeah.
That's got caramel, almost a butterscotch bomb. It turned to butterscotch for me.
This is an 80 proof, and if you compare it to most 80 proofs today, they tend to be bottom shelf bourbons, and they tend to be watered down, very thin. This is not thin.
No.
This is not watered down. It is an 80 proof, but it is a flavorful, tasty 80 proof.
It's 80 proof on purpose.
Yes.
Not to get a cheaper product in the glass.
Try to get
because
more.
I can still see your legs. I mean, the legs on his glass are very clingy. They're really hanging out. And the fact that I'm getting butterscotch notes, I can probably name on one hand the number of bourbons we have in this room that give me butterscotch notes. And it doesn't happen often for me, when the caramel goes to that extreme and turns to butterscotch, and I love it when it does.
Now for myself, I'm getting a little bit more of the caramel. I get what you're talking about with the butterscotch.
It's like the butterscotch candy, the Brock's. That's what it's reminded. It's not like, you made butterscotch or things like. It's like the butterscotch orange candy. You put it in your mouth and suck on it. That is what it tastes like to me.
It's a very zesty bourbon. There's a lot for 80 proof.
Yeah, it's got some pop and spring, and what I call, when we do get zest, I typically call it like a springtime bourbon. Something that'd be great in the summertime because it's light and bright. It makes you, there are certain bourbons that you want to drink in the wintertime because they've got so much of that oak going on and they're just deep and dark. This is a light, springy bourbon.
I would love to find out who the master distiller was at Hill & Hill at that point, because this is brilliantly done.
And he would have been barreling this in 1970. I would have been 10 years old.
I would have
Stop
been...
it. I just, now the nose, which I thought was caramel, now that I'm tasting that Brock's butterscotch candy, I am, that my grandmother had. I never bought them myself, but my grandmother always had a little candy dish of those. And so I'm tasting that.
Really good.
What are you getting on the finish?
For an 80 proof, it's hanging around. There is a lot going on. And looking straight ahead of me, there's a lot of bottles up there that are 110, 120 proof that
130
that
So.
I expect to pick up stuff on. Once again, I go back to that 80 proof, and whoever was the master distiller with this put a lot of love into this, because boy, it's solid. It's
and I
good.
would say that whoever, at that point in time, I don't know how distilleries were organized. Like today, you have a maturation manager and a warehouse manager. The distiller didn't always get involved in deciding when to come out. Whoever decided this barrel was ready at 4 years, this particular one was really smart on that. Because I'm still feeling it. And I haven't had a sip for the time you were talking. I didn't have a sip during that time. And I'm still feeling it. It's not like blowing my finish away, right? But I know it's there. And there's so often that we drink a lower proof and you take a sip and it's gone. And that is not the case with this.
It's different. It falls into that category of the classic dusty bottle, barrels that came from trees at a different time that may have been older, water that may or may not have been pure or was not purified
or how the grains were grown then.
How the grains were grown.
And even how they were handled when they came to the distillery could have been a little bit different because you weren't doing quite as much mass production as you are today.
And for me, honestly, I dig the bottle. I love the label. I love the look. I'm looking at the back of the bottle. It's just a solid looking bottle. I just look at this, and this is probably something that they envision this like some guy or girl having in their back pocket, and they're picking it out.
It's the kind that fits in your back pocket with the little edge there. It could fit right in the back pocket.
It's just a cool looking bottle, and you have accessories from back in the day, like this here, Hill & Hill. It doesn't fit this. I believe this was actually made for the 500 milliliter. But anyway, it's out.
And I'll just say too that this is truly my first taste. When we were in Elizabethtown on the 28th of December,
Yes.
with the new Revival, Wayne did a nice 2-ounce pour of this. And you got to really sink into what they had for that. I was a designated driver that day, so I just had a little sip. And so this is truly my first experience with it, and I'm just loving it because I didn't really get the experience that day.
And that one was coming out of a 500 milliliter. And if you are at Revival in Elizabethtown or you're close to that, they have a bottle there. If you have the opportunity to try it, do it. It is worth it. It is a really good price. It is different than what you're going to find currently on the market. I'll ask you this question. Is this a bottle that you would consider buying again?
I probably would. And it's because it's historic, and it's the butterscotch has won me over. Mm-hmm. Because again, looking at our shelves, I could probably count on one hand the number of bottles up there that I typically get butterscotch on. And I'm not saying I'm a butterscotch addict in any way, shape, or form, but it's a different sweetness that you only get from certain bottles.
Mm-hmm. And it's a different type of butterscotch as well.
It is a Brock's hard candy.
Yes.
And it tastes like a Brock's hard candy. It's almost like they took Brock's hard candies and dissolved them in the barrels.
Well,
and I'm not complaining about that.
after trying this, I honestly at some point Brad, if you're seeing this, I'm going to contact you at some point. I'll probably see you in person. I'm going to want to get a 500 milliliter bottle of this. That will last us probably long enough to where it would suffice and probably not cause us to go into bankruptcy personally. And if you're curious, this bottle here was about $150 to $175. Once again, you could say, well, 200 milliliter, it's small, but we're not going to be sitting here and pulling this out every day.
No, and you're tasting history. If you love bourbon and you love history, I think you have to do at least a little bit of this in your bourbon journey.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be, we don't do it all the time. We've opened several of these decanters that are behind us and tasted them. Some of them are phenomenal. Some of them maybe got a little too much air. But, some of them are just amazing. And to taste them and compare them to today's bourbons are pretty amazing. And you can do that at Revival, either in Elizabethtown or in Covington. In Covington, they also have a bottle shop, so you can actually buy things there. They don't have that type of licensing in Elizabethtown, but you can certainly taste it there. So if you're in Bardstown, it's like a 30-minute drive.
We're going to be wanting another bottle, Brad, of this. We will talk to you about it. I know when you get it, we'll be able to work something out.
And we can't recommend them enough. And again, we're not working for them in any way, shape, or form, but everything we've gotten from them has been great. I would much rather buy from someone that I can look in the eye, walk in their shop, do some tastes, and then buy a bottle they have on the shelf versus buying it online from some secondary person I don't know.
Yes.
So if you're interested in getting into trying some dusty bottles and tasting a piece of history, I would actually absolutely recommend someone like Revival Vintage Spirits with Brad and Shannon.
Good guy, great business.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't even know how to go with this, but Hill and Hill, if there was anybody that's out there that watches this, that
worked for them before,
that worked for them
in any capacity.
Yeah, we would love to hear from you. You did a great job in the day putting together with this, and it is an honor to have this on our shelf. And we will enjoy this every time that we fill our dram. Cheers to you. If you like us, please drink responsibly, and hopefully you'll follow us. Cheers.
Cheers.